What's going on, everyone? This is Matt, Squeaky Clean Air, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bagging an RC350 all-wheel drive coupe. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're going to begin with the rear kit. These are the individual pieces that it comes with. Basically, you have the shocks over here, which are direct fit. They have the dampness adjustability. Most of the Lexuses, those who are familiar with Lexus, they're top mounted, so there is no specific upper mount. These directly bolt up to the chassis and they go over here in the lower control arm. And with the newer Lexuses, they have a special sort of like a setup that you got to put together from these individual pieces that will directly fit into the back, which is kind of what we're doing over here. But we stumbled upon a little bit of a problem. A bad casting. I guess Airlift Performance, when they were doing quality checks, just kind of slipped through, which means that I'm not able to thread this in because either there's a bad weld or some kind of a welder, and the reason why that is because there's welds inside of the threads, if you guys can see over here. So right off the bat, you know what, I'm trying to assemble this rear and I'm running into issues, so that's a little bit of a pita. Anyways, we know what we're doing, so what we're going to do is we're going to use one of these guys in order to restore the threads, so we can get up and running and assemble the back piece. I'm going to double check how this one is. It happens, right? You know what I mean, guys? You're paying like almost $6K for a kit, so it could happen. There's absolutely no issue with these, I guess. This one seems to be okay. Let me double check if I can thread it in. That's probably why. That's probably why you would want to go to someone that knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you'd struggle. No, this one's okay. This one's threading through, so we're okay on this one. I'm still gonna run. Sort of a thread restorer on this because it seems to be a little bit tough to put in. But this one is not as bad. So basically, you get the kit like this with the individual mounts, and according to the manual, you got to put it together. So we're gonna assemble the rear bags. I like these bags. These bags are pretty slim in the back. A little bit of a different design compared to all the other Lexuses, the IS and the GS chassis. The IS and the GS chassis has the rear bag on the actual shock, but the newer Lexuses have the rear spring setup separated. Now, don't quote me on this, but I've seen some guys that are running the new Lexuses, and they're abandoning the whole separated bag setup, and they're running the rears from actually the older Lexuses, GS and IS chassis, the 3rd gen and the 2nd gen IS, and the ones with the rear bags over here, and they're able to mount them up to the lower control arms, and they're able to run that kind of a setup compared to the separated setup. I haven't had a chance to mess around with one yet. I will take the the RC350 apart when I start doing the installation, just to sort of have an idea, but I'll be able to get back to you guys and give you a little bit more of an insight whether that's feasible, because I do have a rear 3GS actually shock, and I'm going to see if they fit, and if they fit, then we'll know that you can essentially run the 3GS setup with a reverted bag on the bottom versus compared to the separated setup and stuff like that. That sort of seems to be the norm for these. But we're gonna quickly restore these threads, and we'll get up and running, and we'll assemble these rear bags into the setups, and we'll go from there. All right, so never mind. I had to use one of these guys to actually drill it through and thread it through, because this is the lower mount that it goes down on. And then that's where you'll be able to mount sort of this bracket. that retains it to the lower control arm. So the thread restore didn't work. I had to use a drill bit that tops it through. This is an M10 1.5 thread, and then I fixed it. But I'm a little bit disappointed at Airlift. But anyways, we're making it work, and stay tuned. Okay, so we have the back. We're starting on the back. And first things first, you got to loosen up this bolt, the inner bolt, because you want to have a little bit of slack. Obviously, don't just loosen it up without having a support. So I have a support stand. And there's also a shield, like a plastic shield that you need to remove. And these are removed by 10mm bolts. I removed it on the other side. And what else? The sway bar end link. The sway bar end link is in here. So make sure you grab it. You can get it from this side. Not super complicated. The struts or the shocks mount up from the top. And I do believe that it is possible to have it. Actually, it's not possible to have it because the shock is a little bit too close to this hub here. So maybe you do need to have a separated bag, unless you run an ultra slim bellow sleeve on top over here. That's probably what you could do, but you can't use a reverse. You can't use a reverse bag. You can use the second gen GS, the one that I have, where I have a sleeve over here, and that will work because then it doesn't get in the way. So you could do that way, and you can run a sleeve setup from the back for sure. So you can definitely use, because it's the same shocks. But I think the reason why they went with a separated shock in the bag on the RCs and the ISs is because of this this really, really thick sort of like a cast piece that they're using now for the rear suspension. But yeah, you could definitely use the shocks with the sleeves in the back. I'm not sure. I know Eric's used to use those for a while. I'm not sure if D2 Racing still does or True Heart. I'd have to look into it. But my old Eric's ones have the sleeves on top. I converted them into ultra slim bellow, so I'm okay. But that will probably work in the back here. But anyways, so this is removed. We're going to match up the Airlift Performance setup. You need to remove the lower shield because you're going to put the spacer, the retaining spacer, over here. You got to be able to sort of fit from the back. How are we going to do that? Oh, you're going to kind of move it and attach it, and then you'll be able to sort of put it through. So let me work on the rear and put the bag in, and then go from there. Man, the Airlift rear is a little bit tough to put on. I got it in. The bag is the toughest part. And you need to kind of have it aligned in a specific way. What I recommend you do first is the top bracket. For those familiar with the Airlift kit, it has a retainer that goes through this little bracket over here. Okay, so you're literally gonna have to kind of slide in the retainer. Do not remove this. Just slide in the retainer from top, and then pivot the upper mount with the hex bolt that's provided, and sort of get it started so it catches with the threads. And then once you kind of have this settled where you can spin it around, see, mine's kind of spinning around but not spinning around. It doesn't really have to be tight, but you want to get it to the point where the upper mount, I'll demonstrate a little bit better on the other side because we just figured this out, easier way to do it. So this upper mount allows you flexibility and movement. And the reason why you want to do that is because you will not put this whole bag together and then install it. It's a pain in the ass to do it, especially if you need the retention bolt on top or you need a retention plate on top that goes through here. There's a hex bolt that goes through here. I'll demonstrate on the other side a little bit better, but sort of to get you guys primed with what I'm going to be doing. Because what you're going to do is you got to have the ability to move the upper mount, because when you're going to get the bag up there, you're going to have to kind of fit through and move around, so you can literally move your hand like this and put these bolts through. One from this side, and then the other top retaining bolt that goes on the little lip over here from this side. See how I can put my thing, put my finger through. So The best way to do it is put the little plate through the top bracket that comes factory. Take the upper mount and prime it with the or start it with the hex bolt in order to mount it up. And then once you have it to the position where the upper mount sort of pivots, because you're going to need to be able to pivot in order to align the lower brackets. Yeah, it's fucking complicated, pardon my French. To align these holes to go in these factory retention brackets. Of course, they don't cover this in the manuals because airlift manuals. I love that company because they produce quality stuff, but they don't really go into depth in regards to that. You kind of have to figure it out. But these holes that are on the bottom, which is why we do these videos, these holes on the bottom have to kind of align and sit on here, and then you have another plate that retains through here. So I found the easiest way to do it is mount the upper plate first, attach the bag, have it in a position where you're able to somewhat rotate it, not super loose, but just enough for you to be able to rotate it. So you can align the bottom and put it on the lower control arm. Now, the other funny thing is look where they position the freaking fitting. They position the freaking fitting from this side. So you got to run the line through here. Like, Squeaky Clean Air, I don't want to plug my brand, and other brands have gotten away with this 3-piece bracket, you know, and a lot of the manufacturers now are using bags that have the fittings right on the bag, so it's easier to route the lines. Like this, you know, this tells me that you have one universal bag that you use for 90% of the kits, and then you just fabricate specific mounts for the specific vehicle. I don't know about you guys, but this is like a pain in the ass to install, and it's kind of redundant, but it is what it is. Why we do these videos to show you guys a little bit easier on how to do it. You know, this is just the way that they designed theirs. That's all it is really, and the customer wanted airlift air suspension, so this is why we're installing it. And it's my first time doing an RC350. It's a little bit different than all the other Lexuses, but this is what you got to do. So I'll demonstrate a little bit better on the other side so you guys have a better understanding with what I'm talking about. I'll kind of do it in pieces. Okay, so let's do a better look on the other side. So this is a spacer that goes on top of the bracket, and it literally just sits there. And this is what you have to mate with that spacer by using this hex bolt. So a lot of it is by feel, but let me show you guys. So over here is where you have the bracket. So you kind of have to figure out a way to put it in there. And I think the best way to put it in there is from here. And you kind of have to let it sit. You guys see it? Whoops. How about if we do that again? So kind of make it go from here and put it so it sits like that. Now take that mount to kind of position it so it's a little bit in the center. Now take that mount and sort of by feel try to thread it on. So I'm going to do that right now. Here's the upper mount. And then there's a little sort of perforation that this goes in flat. So what you got to do is you kind of have to go and align it with that spacer and kind of thread it on so it sits there. So I'm going to do that right now. What you guys have to pay attention is it has to sit super flat like that. If it sits a little bit off, that's probably a dirt piece. So just take your finger and sort of clean inside there to make sure that it sits like that, sort of right at the edge, because you're not going to have a lot of space to thread that upper mount into it. So it's got to kind of sit as best as you guys can. Make sure as best as you guys can get it aligned. So make sure that you guys clean it with your fingers so there's no dirt preventing it from sitting flush like that.